there's a lot of things I think people don't realize where Ameriprise really stands out. And what I'm hoping for my audience is that they learn something today, that if they are thinking about making a move and exploring the other options, they really should be giving Ameriprise an opportunity. I have this expression, Brian, that I talk about, like, you don't know what you're saying no to.
Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa, brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners. It's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and the direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. And now, welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I'm your host, Frank LaRosa, and today I have a great guest for you. We are not going to be talking about triathlons and all sorts of extreme sports, even though I have Brian Mora on the line here today. He's a I'm going to say senior VP at Ameriprise. Essentially, he's the head of all experienced advisor recruiting at Ameriprise, and he's an extreme athlete, of which I am not, so we're not going to go down that road. Brian, welcome to the show.
And Frank, thanks for having me. I thought that's exactly what we were here to talk about. 30 minutes on endurance sports and boxing, and you like to do car racing. I don't have any notes prepared for recruiting or Ameriprise, so I'll have to get prepared. I'll have to get prepared here in a hurry.
Yeah, we can go down that road. I love boxing, but it's getting more and more difficult. So I'm going to sit in a car and drive. My body can handle that.
There you go.
And anyway, so. For my guests, I always bring on what I think are great, for my guests, for people listening, I always bring on great guests that I think can add a lot of value to the space. We're going to talk about some things about Ameriprise that a lot of people don't maybe not realize. Ameriprise, I get asked frequently a lot of times, and we're not going to talk about technology today, but I get asked all the time, like, hey, Frank, who's got the best technology on the street, right? And I say, generally, Raymond James is, I think, the number one, and I say, and a close second is Ameriprise. And people are usually shocked. They're like, really? I'm like, oh, yeah. So we're not going to get into technology, but my point is there's a lot of things I think people don't realize where Ameriprise really stands out, and what I'm hoping for my audience is that they learn something today, that if they are thinking about making a move and exploring the other options, they really should be giving Ameriprise an opportunity. I have this expression, Brian, that I talk about, like, you don't know what you're saying no to, right? So if you're going to make a move and you're going to do it the right way and you're going to look at firms, then you should look at all of the firms that are in this sort of the wheelhouse of what you're looking for, right? And so if it's independence or whatever, and you're looking for higher value service, experience, technology, all those things, then Ameriprise should be in that mix. And I'm not saying this because you're on the call. I say this all the time, right? Like, don't say no to Ameriprise if you haven't talked to somebody at Ameriprise, right? Or if you haven't seen the technology. Like, at least explore, because I've gone down the road a lot of times with some clients, and this has happened over the years. I know this is a long lead in, but I think it's important. Where I've early on in my career, I would talk about Ameriprise because I've been working with Ameriprise for a long time now. I mean, I think they gave me my third contract: Raymond James, UBS, and then Ameriprise. And there was a lot. And at the beginning, I didn't know a lot about Ameriprise, and some people would be like, "Oh, I don't want to talk to Ameriprise." I'm like, okay, fine. And then I would look up them 6 months later, and they were at Ameriprise. And and I'll never. I mean, I tell a story all the time, but I actually called one guy back, and I'm like, hey man, his name was Steve. I won't use his last name, but his first name was Steve. I'm like, you told me you would never go to Ameriprise. What happened? And he's like, well, I took a phone call and agreed to take a meeting and sit down with a regional guy, and I was blown away. And he went into this iteration about everything. And from that day on, I always swore that I would do my part in making sure that an advisor at least took a meeting or had a conversation with somebody at Ameriprise to learn what they have before you say, no, I'm not interested, right? So anyway,
I think we'll get into it. There's a really logical reason why I think that's happened for a lot of people, because the Steve you just told the story about is not alone. We've had more advisors than I can even count who, after they joined us, acknowledged or admitted that we weren't on their list at the beginning or near the top of their list, but they couldn't ignore what they saw once they actually took a look at us. And that there's a real reason for that. And we're obviously proud of that. And we're still working to make sure people understand the current 2025 version of Ameriprise versus maybe who we were 24 years ago when I joined the company. So we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah, because I want to talk about, because there's probably people listening to this podcast that are saying, oh yeah, that's, I wouldn't go to Ameriprise, but they're not, their logic isn't sound, right? So I mean, I don't know if we can get into that, but one of the things that my first question really was going to be, why do you think Ameriprise is winning advisors today, sort of now more than ever? Because if you read the news rags, you're seeing not only more advisors going to Ameriprise, but bigger advisors going to Ameriprise, right? From all different firms, Raymond James and LPL and the traditional wires. Why do you think that's the case? And then maybe secondarily, this whole idea of what do you think advisors have wrong about why they don't want to necessarily engage with Ameriprise at the beginning, at least?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think, I've been honored to be your guest once before, but for your audience that, maybe hasn't heard from me or know much about Ameriprise, maybe I'll just start by, sharing a little bit about my background and how that fits into the story of how we may be a little bit misunderstood in the marketplace, not by all advisors, because over the last 17 or 18 years, we've had, nearly 4,500 experienced advisors join us. I mean, so it's not a small number of advisors that have taken a look at us and decided that we're the right partner. But, if I just take my history, I mean, of course, Ameriprise is a 131-year-old company, but if I take just my career history, I began at the beginning of September, I began my 25th year with the company. And when I joined the firm 24 years ago as a financial advisor, so the first role I had at the organization is I was an FA, I built my own book, became a CFP, and ultimately earned my way into leadership as a result of building a good practice. The firm that we were 24 years ago when I joined is very, very different than the firm we are today. 24 years ago, the company was owned by American Express and operated under the brand name American Express Financial Advisors. And our primary growth strategy was hiring people that looked like my profile. We were hiring either recent college graduates or career changers, essentially novice people who weren't in the industry before, and we were licensing them and training them. Today, we still do a decent amount of novice hiring to where we do licensing and training, but we primarily do it where we're helping an established mature advisor or mature practice grow and add to their team. And 24 years ago, Frank, I'll say the sophistication of the company in terms of the technology, the product offering, it was really quite behind the average in the industry. And we didn't need to be at the industry average or above the industry average because we weren't trying to have a conversation with those in your audience today that are $500,000, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million producers. We were having conversations with career changers and college graduates who were primarily concerned with how will you help me get licensed and how will you train me? They didn't care about being the best of the technology and having the greatest product platform. But, a seminal moment in our history happened 20 years ago. In fact, 20 years ago next week. So on October 3rd of 2005, American Express completed the sixth largest spinoff in U.S. business history, and American Express Financial Advisors became a new company. We became branded Ameriprise Financial, and we became our own separate publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. So next week will mark 20 years of our separation from Amex and our brand of Ameriprise and us being our own standalone company. And just a couple of years after that spinoff happened, about 18 years ago, we then made the next big change, which was to say, how do we go about growing the organization with mature, sophisticated, established advisors? And the answer to that question was, well, we can't do that really at the volume and the rate we want to until we begin to make investments in things that advisors value. We needed to upgrade our technology. And I appreciate the compliment you paid that we're one of the top technology stacks in the industry. That's on purpose. We decided, okay, we're behind in technology now. That's 18 years ago. Let's make the investments and not just get up to par. Let's strive to actually have the best tech stack in the industry. And, I have a lot of respect for Raymond James, but we've also had advisors from Raymond James join us and say they've got an enhanced experience in some aspects with their technology. So the technology investment was one big one we made. The product expansion was another big one. I could list off, a dozen different product
Yeah,
categories
I
that
get that a lot. I get that a lot.
yeah.
Oh, they don't have the right products. I'm like, well, based on when?
No, well, and you're if somebody said that to you, they would probably be correct if the last time they got an update was 18 to 20 years ago. If they said, oh, this firm doesn't have securities-based lending, or they don't have a lot of insurance and annuity offerings.
Yeah,
Those
it's all
things would have been
proprietary
true.
products.
Yep, all true 20 years ago, all false today based on the investments and the enhancements that we've made. So I think that gives you kind of a high level summary as to, why there may be some misnomers in the industry about us, but also as people have said, you know what, it would be in my best interest to look at who the firm is today. And if I am going to say no, I at least know what I'm saying no to, but we've surprised more than our fair share of people where they say, wow, this company still is a Midwestern firm with great values and culture. They're not an investment bank, so I know a lot of the wire house advisors are not thrilled with the environment of being their broker dealer being owned by a bank. So we're not an investment bank. And a lot of the independents feel like they're a bit too independent. They feel that I can't really get the help and support that I want from my firm. And I'm looking for a bit more partnership. I don't want anybody managing me or pushing me to do things with my business that I don't want to do. I want to remain independent, but I'm looking for a bit of partnership. And so we've surprised some people.
Yeah, I think that I think that component is I liken it to like, do you want to shop at Neiman Marcus or do you want to shop at Costco? Right? It's Ameriprise. There's a couple of firms that I call premium value firms, right? So you're an advisor is not going to join Ameriprise, whether it's on the what we call P1, which everybody on the call, the P1 channel, we refer to P1, that's their employee channel, W2, or their P2 channel, which is their franchise channel. But it's a little bit more expensive in terms of sort of, I'll say payout, but it's sort of more than that, right? But it's what you're getting for the service. And if we can just jump a little bit, I want to talk about some things that you maybe are coming down the road from Ameriprise, things that maybe you can and cannot say, or if you can't say them, don't say them. But, sort of look behind the curtain with some of the things that Ameriprise is working on. But since we're talking about this particular topic and why advisors are sort of joining Ameriprise and the value, right? The feedback that we get sometimes is, oh, well, their payout isn't as high, or they're a little more, their platform is a little more expensive, right? But you bring to the table a much different experience for that advisor on both channels, right? So can you talk a little bit about why, as an industry, if you look at the stats across all the different firms, why your advisors tend to grow faster than advisors at other firms? Because when I'm talking to an advisor that's considering or not considering Ameriprise, and they bring up the payout thing, right? I'm like, listen, it's all about how much money you make, not the payout. Because if you make a little bit lower payout, but you grow faster and end up making more money, isn't that what you're here for? Like, isn't that what you're trying to do, right? And they're like, well, that's true. Like, so then you need to look for a firm that's going to help you grow faster than another firm.
Yeah.
So can you just touch on that for a little bit? Because I get so frustrated because they get obsessed with the payout and they don't look at the actual number, the amount of money that hits your bank account.
Yeah. So Financial Advisor Magazine has an article out right now called The Organic Growth Paradox. I'm not an expert in the article. I've only read it one time, so I'm not prepared to quote all of the statistics that are in it and all of the so what. But one statistic that I did read in there, it said that organic growth in the industry has slowed to a crawl of about 3%. The average Ameriprise advisor across 10,500 advisors grows at 11% a year. Now, some of your listening audience may think, 11% a year, I grow at 15 or 20%. And even my response to that advisor would be the fact that our average growth rate across 10,500 advisors is at 11%. That's nearly 4 times as much as Financial Advisor Magazine is citing that the average advisor in the industry grows at. So we too have advisors that grow to have an average of 11. We have advisors that grow at 15 and 20 and 30 and even 40%. And so I think it's important to sort of distinguish for a moment. We actually have 3 advisor affiliation channels. You mentioned 2 of them very appropriately. We have our Ameriprise Advisor Group, formerly P1 Business. That's our W2 branch business of about 115 branches across the United States. We have our Ameriprise Independent Advisor business, formerly our P2 business. And then we have an institutions group business where we partner with community banks and credit unions who are not registered broker dealers to help them with having financial advisors work at their community banks and credit unions and be on the Ameriprise platform. And the reasons for growth, there's some similarities for those growth numbers across all 3 channels. And then there's some dissimilarities. So for example, I would cite one of the reasons for growth across all of our business channels is what we were talking about a few minutes ago, the investment in technology. Technology is important relative to growth because if you're at a firm that has invested heavily in it and, for example, has spent the money to integrate all of the tools and systems, that reduces redundancy. And as I'm saying this, there are people listening to this that will say, yeah, myself or my team are wasting a ton of time because we have 10 or 12 different tools, and maybe the tools themselves are okay, but the tools are not integrated. The tunnels basically haven't been dug to get all the tools to work together. And so it causes an advisor or their staff to enter or re-enter information or to try to pull account values into the financial planning tool. And it's just a tremendous amount of wasted time. So our growth is being unlocked because the technology is integrated and it's always available. Some of the firms in the industry, their technology is not reliable. The technology works one day, it goes down for a few hours. We hear that from advisors that are highly frustrated about that experience. So those 2 things enable growth across all of our business channels. In our employee business, I believe one of the other reasons we've had significant growth is because we've invested in operations staff at ratios much more aggressively than our wirehouse or regional competitors. We also have built in incredible turnkey systems for M&A. An advisor comes to us and says, I'm young enough and in a position that I'd like to buy a practice from an advisor who's retiring. A lot of our competitors will permit an advisor to buy a practice. We can actually demonstrate to an advisor that we have built a system to help them find, locate, complete the due diligence on, and finance an acquisition. But I think the thing we do in our independent business that's most unique is we really do help locate these practices for our independent advisors. We hear, frankly, feedback from a lot of other independents that say, I could buy a practice at my firm, but there's not really anybody helping me locate it or helping me do the due diligence and even determine if this practice would be a good fit. So we're committed to the full process of location, due diligence, financing to make it a great experience. And
yeah,
so,
and even with I would say that you're also flexible because we have an M&A firm, and Ameriprise allows us on behalf of Ameriprise advisors, really more specifically on the franchise side, primarily,
Yep.
right? But allows us to operate within Ameriprise to satisfy the needs of a potential seller that maybe they can't find someone on their own, and they allow us to work with them to help them find a potential suitor, successor, buyer within the Ameriprise. So it satisfies buyers, right? Because they're growing their business, and then it also helps the seller find a successful buyer. And so there are some firms, I would say there's a lot of firms that don't feel comfortable with us operating that way, and Ameriprise is one of the ones that does, because they value basically, like, if this is good for our financial advisor, I almost said our client, but the way you look at it is your client, right? For our financial advisor, then why wouldn't we want you to help them? And so I
Yeah.
think that's really good. So
I'll move us into another question that you asked, but it's connected to growth, but it's also connected to the question you asked about like what's coming, so to
yeah,
speak.
yep.
And I don't think I have any announcements of what might be coming in
So
six
no
to 12
breaking news
months.
today.
Yeah, there's no breaking news, but I think it's important to talk about maybe what news has just broken over the last 12 to 24 months because it's probably not well known in the industry, but it does unlock incredible growth. So Frank, I think back to how I started in the business as an advisor, and I know you started it as well. And I think back not to the prospecting part of building my practice, but to the client service part of being an advisor, and how I used to prepare for a client meeting, and it would take me or my team an hour or two to get ready for a client meeting to pull all the different performance reports and financial plans. And then I'd be thinking to myself, have I left any stones unturned as far as business that I should be implementing with my client? Maybe something that they would like, a product that they would need or like, or a strategy that they would need or like. And then I always wanted to be really thorough in my follow up, and I would take lots of notes on a yellow notepad and then come back to my office and type up summary letters and lick an envelope and put them in the mail to my clients. All of those principles that we were doing 20 to 25 years ago are still really important today. But if a firm has invested in AI and in automation, they can make those things happen for the advisor much more efficiently and at an even higher level of precision and professionalism. There's a lot of talk. The buzzword in the industry or the buzz phrase in conversation is about AI. And I think some advisors are fearful and wonder, will AI replace what I do as an advisor? And I don't think AI is going to replace the financial advisor, but I think the advisor and team who partner with a firm that harness AI are going to replace the advisors that don't do it, or are going to replace the firms that don't do it.
Oh yeah.
So I'll give you just three examples that we're leveraging that I think make a huge difference. We have a piece of technology we call e-meeting. E-meeting is a client service meeting presentation that with the click of a single button, it scans every report that is available for an advisor to use with their client and pulls it into one PowerPoint presentation. And it makes it look for the client like you and your team must have spent 2 or 3 hours to build what could be as little as a 10 or 20 page PowerPoint, as much as 100 if you were going to give a client every single page that was generated. The advisor, of course, still needs to look at the presentation, decide what they're going to talk about, decide what they're going to recommend. But we have taken the work of having to get prepared for the client meeting and make it a professional experience off of the advisor and their staff's plate by using automation, AI, and a meeting generating tool. At the same time, we have another system that we call Insights, and Insights has more than 100 different recommendations that could tell an advisor what strategy or product a client may be missing or may be at propensity to implement in their practice. So instead of having to just sit around and brainstorm, what might the LaRosa family need or what recommendation might I need? The firm is serving up ideas to the advisor. The advisor is not required to implement any of them. We don't mandate it, we don't push it. We're providing stuff that we see through big data trends with clients to say, Frank, your client, the Mora family, may need this idea, may need this strategy. You can take it or leave it. And then the final thing we're doing through the use of Microsoft Copilot, with the client's authorization, we can allow the computer to listen to the client meeting and summarize all of the key actions and notes. So it doesn't take any time for you or your staff to create a great summary. Or even, I'll admit, I've had a client meeting in my life where I forgot to write something down and my client had to remind me of something we committed to do. No worse feeling in the world than a
Yeah.
client having to remind me as the advisor that I was supposed to do something. So with the use of AI and automation, listening to the meeting and summarizing the meeting, we've just elevated the advisor substantially between the product and strategy recommendations, the meeting prep, and the meeting summarization.
Do you see that when we look at what's going on in the industry and the success that Ameriprise is having, and we're not really we don't need to talk about other firms and competitors, stuff like that by name, right? But are you seeing that advisors are leaving firms not solely because of that reason, right? But they're finding that their firm isn't stepping up with the times. They're not reinvesting in technology as much as they can because it's a lot of money, right? And they're seeking opportunities that have this stuff. Like, is that one of the reasons why you think that you are having this success?
So I will say, I'm going to start in the independent space. In the independent space, most independent advisors are given the freedom to go do all of that themselves. But who has the time, the money, and the expertise to build all of that? You'd have to take that time away from serving clients and growing your book of business to build and install it all. There's tons of, I mean, I could use a million examples of things that I don't know how to do. If my car needs to be fixed, I could spend hours on YouTube attempting to figure out how to do it. It's going to cost me time, and it's probably going to cost me a lot more money because I'll do it wrong. I find in the independent space, people are valuing, okay, to your point, maybe Ameriprise isn't the single highest payout or the single lowest administrative cost, but an advisor is intelligent enough to connect the dots to say, Ameriprise is deploying that money into investing in systems and tools that help me grow faster, and it increases my cash flow, it increases my equity value. In the employee space, we actually hear, and even in the institution space, you know what we hear a lot of, Frank? We hear, oh, my firm invested in that tool, but they didn't connect it and integrate it with the other tools, or they didn't release all of the horsepower of that
Right.
tool. Like I'll use just two technology providers by brand name. Salesforce for CRM and MoneyGuide Pro. We'll hear some advisors say, yeah, my firm has Salesforce, but they haven't turned on all the capabilities. Or
Right.
my firm has MoneyGuide Pro, but I don't have access to,
Yeah, they have the base
certain
edition.
aspects. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Wealth Studios. And so they'll be very frustrated that the firm hasn't opened the full capability and that they haven't integrated it in. So it's either independent advisors don't want to spend the time, energy, and money, and they know that it's kind of going down the rabbit hole that they shouldn't be in, or it's W-2 advisors that say, the firm's made an attempt, but they've only crossed the bridge halfway.
Okay. So let's go. Let's stay on this track, right? And again, we're going to sort of come back to some of the more industry trends stuff. I'd like to get your opinion on some things, or really maybe your opinion of Ameriprise's opinion and leadership.
That's well
So
said.
when you are working with an advisor that moves from another firm, doesn't matter where, they come over to Ameriprise. What are the two or three things that you're seeing that advisors are doing immediately that have significant impact? I'll say on the growth of their firm, but more like significant impact on their move being successful. And I'm not talking about that transition. I'm not talking about like, oh, they follow the protocol rules, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about practice management. Use this opportunity to set your book straight and hit the ground running. Like, what are the couple of things under this topic of like, growth and all that stuff that the most successful recruits are doing when they join Ameriprise?
So the first thing I would say is that we probably have all had an experience in our life at some point, Frank, where someone else was observing us maybe not be our best self, and even if we didn't realize that we weren't our best self, and then
It happens to
when
me
we
all the
made,
time.
yeah, when we, you know, when we changed whatever we changed or did whatever we did, somebody then remarked, Frank, I'm glad you did that because you're a lot happier and you're more like yourself. The first thing I would say in my experience with the advisors that we've seen join is when they're enthusiastic and excited about the resources that Ameriprise is going to partner with them to serve their clients, it comes through in how they communicate to the client. Now, every advisor has a slightly different take on that, right? One advisor might be talking to the client about the enhancement in technology. Somebody else might be saying, I'm going to get better administrative support. Somebody else might say, I'm excited about the leader that's going to help partner with me, who's going to understand my business plan. It doesn't matter what the answer is. When the advisor's expressing enthusiasm and excitement about the partnership, that tends to unlock potentially some business that they tried to get at their prior firm, some assets that they tried to consolidate at their prior firm. But then the next thing that we do that I think is really important, we have a series of calls with an advisor when they join for their first many months. We call them ramp up calls, and people would probably figure out, why do we name them ramp up calls? Because we're helping you integrate and get yourself settled at the firm. And the ramp up calls aren't about us installing things to the advisor that we want installed. It's their business and it's their choice. But it's our leaders dedicating time to the advisor to say, hey, you joined Ameriprise for a lot of things that you heard about during the recruiting experience. We're not going to forget about you once you get here, Frank. I can't tell you the number of people that have told me, hey, this firm's recruiting process was great, but once I got to that firm, they didn't exactly deliver on what they sold to me.
Yeah.
And we're really committed to it not being like that. If we sell you this great idea and concept of who Ameriprise is as a partner, we want to actually over deliver on that and have you say, not only did Ameriprise help me install whatever it is, it could be a new marketing system, it could be M&A, it could be the technology or the tools, but they actually over delivered. Like they literally, quintessentially under promised and over delivered. That's the type of feedback we're looking for. And so these ramp up calls allow us to talk to the advisor consistently and say, okay, how are you doing moving your book? Are there any problems that we have to triage? And are you ready for these things that you wanted to do? And it's that you wanted to do is the really important part of that. It's not us coming and saying, are you ready to sell this product now that we want you to sell, or implement this strategy? It's, Frank, you told us that these three things were going to be important to you, and our coaching is now going to help you bring that to fruition. And if you're not ready, we'll come back. But that's really, I know it's not specific, but it's because no one advisor is like another. And so we're not cookie cutter, but we're customizing the integration and the ramp up approach.
But I think that is relevant because there are firms, again, not naming any, that bring over the advisor. They maybe do a good job with the transition, and then the advisor gets there and they sort of like, they say, well, we're going to give you like 90 days worth of transition support, right? But it's just the transition support. It's ACATs and stuff like that. And after that 90 days, they're sort of left to their own devices, right? Like, hey, good luck, right? And I think that that's very difficult because a lot of advisors, the one aspect that advisors doesn't come up often, but I don't think that they put enough weight in, is that when they leave a firm, they have to make new contacts at the new firm. Yep. Right? It's like the cheat code, right? Your assistant knows who to call, right? Like, don't call that 800 number for a wire. I'm going to call Jill because she always answers and she gets right on my account, right? Like, that's like the cheat code stuff. So I think what you're saying is important.
I listen to you and Stacy all the time, and I hear you give your audience great questions to ask. Like, you're great consultants. You'll tell the advisors, you're talking to Ameriprise, you should ask these 5 questions. I'll give your audience, there's a piece of advice, which is language matters. I call them ramp up calls. You should ask to meet, if you're in a due diligence journey, you should ask to meet the human beings that will handle your transition. That's one phrase. And then ask to meet the human beings that will handle your ramp up. Because ramp up and transition, in my mind, are not the same thing.
2 different things.
Transition is getting your book from point A to point B with the least amount of disruption possible.
Right.
And we're amazing at that. And you can meet the human beings that will help you with that. If it's an 800 number and a box of papers, that's an inferior experience. It should be a team of leaders and people. Then you should ask to meet, who's going to help me ramp up? Who's going to help me be better? The grass being greener, who helps me be better on the other side of this change, and meet those people too. That's what we always make sure we introduce to advisors that are considering.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that. This just came up that one of the things that's unique about your I'll call it your recruiting process, that I tell advisors that they have to be a little bit patient with, right? Is that I'm going to say almost, but maybe you mandate. I'm just going to say almost. But you almost mandate that all recruits have to at least come to do a home office visit, right? And the reason why I'm saying that, and the reason I'm passionate about it, is because if you do listen to my podcast, you know that I'm a huge proponent of advisors going to the places that they're going to potentially work at and meeting the people, because those are the people like you're saying, those are the people that are going to help you ramp up. Those are your first connections to someone in technology, someone in planning, someone in compliance, someone somewhere, right? And if you're not doing that, you're making a big mistake. And one of the things I think Ameriprise does really well is they try to bring as many advisors through that process, bringing them to the home office, whether it's out in Minneapolis or New York, right? And I think that's a really caring way to do it, because you're giving them an opportunity to really interview you. At the same time, you're doing some interviewing yourself, which is what I tell advisors too. Like, don't be a jerk when you go there.
Yeah, and so to your point, we obviously don't mandate that. If somebody wanted to make their decision and join the firm without it, we allow that. But I think about, to your point, I think we're probably singing from the same sheet of music here. I think about the importance of a home office visit for any firm you're considering, and especially the one you're going to join, is really about getting your language prepared for what you tell the client. Like, I would want to be in a position to say, Frank, I want you to know that I took my due diligence on this decision so seriously that I went and spent a day and a half at at Ameriprise's corporate headquarters in Minneapolis or New York City. And I met the senior executives. I looked at the technology my team will use. I looked at the support my team is going to get, so that I could certify to you that I'm going to be in a better position to help you achieve your goals and to run my practice. I think that sentence, or those couple of sentences, to compel your client to move with you, it really demonstrates a level of care and seriousness. Now, I know most advisors say, I've got great relationships and my clients will follow me no matter what. And for the most part, that's probably true. But I think it's an opportunity for you to make sure you don't have a buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
And you can show the client how professionally you took this decision and how seriously you took it. And I know for sure, Frank, that we've had people tell us that, hey, Ameriprise, when I got on the airplane, I thought you guys were maybe second or third on my list. And when I truly got to meet the people and I put my eyeballs on the resources, you guys were the clear choice. So
Yeah.
I obviously want that to be true for Ameriprise, but I would say, even if you're talking to one of our competitors, you owe it to yourself to look at their home office and look at their people as well.
Yeah, I think that for me, I have this expression, and I know it resonates with you. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And so you might be engaging with an infield recruiter, I'll just call them, like an infield recruiter, right? And it's sort of like when you're interviewing people. Everybody's great on the first or second interview, right? But if you go through like your fifth interview with somebody, they tend to loosen up at that point, and you start to see who they really are, right? When I interview people, we call it the gauntlet, because they go through all my leadership team, and they separately and together, right? Yeah. It's like, right? Like, we do an group interview, and I'm part of the group interview, and I don't ask any questions, because I'm just watching, and they're talking, and and so I say that because what I coach advisors to do is go through that process. But then when you go down or up or out to the home office, right? Meet the people that you're looking at. But when you're walking through the hallways, look around. Look at the people walking through the hallways. Do they look miserable, right? Or are they saying hello to people? Hey, how you doing? And like, what's the vibe? I said, because you can't fake that. Like, you can't fake the vibe, right? And I said, you don't get that. What you end up, if you don't do something like that, then you could fall prey to a really good sales recruiter, someone that's really good at their job of selling blue pens, right? So, look, I'm not suggesting that if you're talking to 5 or 6 firms as a client, that you go see all 5 firms, right?
Yeah, but what I do, list your top 2 or 3 and go see them.
Right, that's what I say. When you get down to the top 2, maybe 3, if it's that close to call, but usually isn't, right? Then you got to go get on an airplane, and I think I'm unique because I'm one of the few recruiters, consultants. I hate the term recruiter, but consultants that actually goes with our clients to do that, because I want them to, because it's overwhelming, right? And so I'm there asking questions that they maybe don't realize to ask. Anyway, I want to get to another question, because I'm just watching the clock here. I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum in terms of advisors that are not recruits. So advisors that have been at the firm for many years, right? And you've been a field leader. You've been through the gamut of different positions at the firm, so you've seen a lot. What are the advisors doing that have been here for a long time? What are the top folks doing, guys and gals at the top, that are the ones that are growing at that 20 and 30% a year, what are they doing differently than the average advisor?
So I think the first thing I would say, and at first it will hit like, oh yeah, of course, they're focused on the client experience. But then you've got to peel the onion a couple of layers and say, well, what does it mean to really be focused on the client experience? Because it's easy to say, and I think every firm and every advisor, like if a prospective client called anybody and said, hey, do you have good client service? Every advisor would say, yeah, we've got great client service. Our
Yeah.
clients love
No
working
one's
with
going to
us.
say no.
Right, we're very committed to that. But then if somebody pressed a little bit further and said, well, can you explain what client service looks like? And then can you demonstrate that to me? That becomes a little bit more challenging depending on what practice or what firm you look at. So what we've done, Frank, is, we've studied, client satisfaction and client behavior extensively. And we're very proud of the fact that across our 10,000, 500 advisors, we actually have an ability for our clients to rate our advisors on their website with star ratings, and we average a 4.9 out of 5 stars for client satisfaction. And we've had nearly 300,000 clients give our advisors a rating on the
I actually
website.
saw that on a commercial today.
Yeah, and so I mean, we're proud enough that our PR and marketing team knows that that's a big deal to highlight, because if you think about the way we shop or make other purchasing decisions, restaurants, you're a car guy, cars, you look at those things when you're making decisions. And so, how did we achieve that, or how did we help partner with our advisors to achieve it? Is really implementing what we started by calling the Ameriprise client experience, but then really each practitioner has brought that to life in their own practice. So if I was running Mora Wealth Management, I'm not going to call it the Ameriprise client experience. I'm going to call it the Mora Wealth Management client experience. And there's really, 4 key principles to it. But the first of which is having great goal-based advice, tools, and solutions so that clients can see their goals. Maybe back in the day, we would have called that formally financial planning, but it's really about goal-based advice, and that ensuring that clients can see the goals that they're planning for and the performance to those goals, whether they log on their phone, whether they're in a meeting face to face or screen to screen. So goal-based advice is the first thing we've been really committed to helping advisors deliver. The second is customized products and solutions, no cookie cutter approach. And that gets back to what we started with 18 years ago, is that we really needed to open up the product suite and the portfolios and have a state-of-the-art wealth management platform, a non-proprietary insurance and annuity platform, and be able to serve a high net worth clientele. The third is about incredible technology. As I mentioned earlier in our conversation, clients are looking for a great technology experience, not without the advisor, but in partnership with the advisor. They want great technology. They want a mobile app. They want website access. They want real-time information anytime, any place. They don't want to have to wait to come into your office, in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, for their quarterly in-person meeting to see how things are going. They want it anytime, any place, on any device. And then the last one is we've put the advisors in a position to deliver high contact. What hasn't changed in 24 years for me, Frank, is that clients still say that the number one driver of satisfaction is that they hear from their advisor frequently. And we've put advisors in a position for it to not always have to be a face-to-face meeting or even a phone call, with some different automation and tools to be able to have high touch and high contact. Those 4 things seem simple when I say them, but to deliver them at scale to 200, 300, 500, or 1,000 families, it's actually pretty hard for the average practitioner to do it. So we've worked really hard. And I would say that, those 4 elements are what our existing advisors have gotten help and support to implement. And they've done an awesome job bringing it to life.
Do you see a difference in terms of how that's done on the W-2 side, or how advisors are doing that on the W-2 side versus on the franchise independent side?
What I don't see is I don't see a difference in it by tax status or channel affiliation. I definitely see a difference based on, the size and structure of a team. Frank, you know this as well as anybody. Some of your listening audience are in 20, 30, 40 person ensemble teams, and they may have even, family office feels and niches where somebody on the team is an estate planning specialist and tax specialist. And, the deliverable of that experience, depending on the size of the team, Whereas some of the advisors that are affiliated with Ameriprise are a one advisor operation with maybe a little bit of administrative support. So the how they go about that, regardless of channel affiliation and tax status affiliation, I tend to see it differ a bit by size and scope of the team, not so much what channel they affiliate in.
Okay, cool. All right, well, listen, I think that we covered a lot of stuff. We're we're pushing almost 50 minutes, so it's a little bit longer than we go. My attention span is not that long either, so I appreciate that. This was really good, and look, I hope that the audience listening has a different perspective on Ameriprise than they thought. And I know I learned something. Like when I go to a home office visit or I meet with you and I meet with the team, whatever, I hear something, I'm like, oh my, I didn't know that. I keep learning new stuff, right? And so I think that I really hope that advisors that are listening to this that are considering an option at least open their mind to meeting with someone at Ameriprise, because you don't know what you're saying no to. And I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. And Brian, like you, I see more advisors that start off with "I'm not interested" and then end up joining because they didn't realize. I didn't know. I didn't know is what we hear. I didn't know, right? So if someone wants to get in touch with you or someone from your team, aside from actually reaching out to me, which they can, how does one get in touch with somebody if they want to talk to you or somebody else at Ameriprise about the opportunity to potentially affiliate with them in either channel?
Yeah, I have a great team
channels.
all across the. Yeah, thanks for that question. I have a great team all across the country, and based on where you are geographically, would be happy to talk with you directly and then introduce you to the appropriate members of my team. I'd say two ways you can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn if you want to connect on LinkedIn, and also I'll just provide my my cell phone number right here that people could text or call me. It's area code 609-335-8844. 609-335-8844. Frank, you're probably doing some numerical math on that phone number. That's South Jersey. That's where I grew up. I don't live there anymore. But,
I did pick up on it. I'm like 609. Yeah, I was like 609. Okay.
That's Jersey Shore. That's Jersey Shore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, I appreciate the time. I appreciate you being on. I was really excited about doing this. We can do another podcast to talk about extreme sports. I think that'd be great too. There's a lot of synergies between business and extreme sports and the level of commitment and all that other stuff. So, but I appreciate it, and thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for having me. We appreciate it too.
Great.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics relating to the financial services industry, or just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast.